Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's pre-show for our 2201102. This would be our Core 2 A-plus study group. I'm, as you can see, trying to get everything ready to go here. Hello, chat room. I see everybody is settling in. Get a comfortable chair. Pull up to your computer or your mobile device. In the meantime, we'll be starting in about 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And I've got all new questions for you from the Core 2 exam objectives. So this should be good. There's the chat room. Hey, everybody. Let's have a look at our analytics. Are people filing in? They'll file in a moment. We have views and chat rate, and I got a bunch of stuff to look at. Okay, streaming looks good. These look fine. We are recording here. I've already done the podcast intro. That's finished. I think we're in good shape. Hey, chat room. How is everyone? There's Port Washington, New York. There's Orlando. Hello, Orlando, Florida. There's Texas. We've got the LDN is here. Welcome. So glad you folks are joining us. In this first hour, I will go through questions. Second hour, we'll open up questions for the room. Jacksonville, North Carolina. We got Nigeria is here. Another Orlando. Lots of folks in Orlando. There's Toronto. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. The Canadians have checked in. There's Kansas City. Now I want barbecue. There's Austin, Texas. Now I want barbecue. Virginia, South Africa, Cape Town is here. We have Port Washington is the home of John Philip Sousa. I did not know that. I did not know that. Little tidbit, a little fun fact. I played a lot of John Philip Sousa in my lifetime. So that brings back some really fun memories of being in a band and playing and marching, and those are always fun. Oh, we have lots to go through today. I think I've got a lot of things in there. There's Biloxi. I haven't been to Mississippi in a while. I've been to Biloxi, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. That's it. Need to get back. There's London and New York, Massachusetts, 305. Whoop, whoop. They're on the big curve of the 826. Thanks for being here. Chicago's here in Portland. Memphis. Got some folks. Caleb says, recently passed Security Plus. Let's see if you can see that. See it pop up there? I'll have it pop up for you too. Passed Security Plus. Couldn't have done it without your videos. Thanks for everything you do. Well, congratulations on your Security Plus. You're the one that did it. I didn't do it. Why is it difficult to study after 10 p.m.? Well, that's a good question. Probably because I have an Xbox controller in my hand. That would be my reasoning. I don't last much past 10 o'clock, though. I'm up early. I'm up with the chickens. So I get up early, and then I immediately am in the studio doing those. Right now, my go-to Xbox game is Diablo 4. I've played Diablo 3 forever, literally over 10 years. I guess it's, 11 years or so, something like that. And now that the new version is out, that's all me and my friends are doing. It's just hanging out and getting in a group. I got on by myself on Diablo 4 last night and was getting crushed, just annihilated. And then my friend showed up and we all got together, and it's just so much fun to be in a group and do things like that. Can I tell you about my setup? This thing, there's a lot going on there, isn't it? There's a lot of moving parts. One of these days I will make I do have plans to do that. So in the TFA MFA section of the 1102 visits, why do I say pseudo-random? I don't say quasi-random because that's just weird. But talking about the randomizers that are built into your phone apps or standalone token generators, I call them pseudo-random because with computers, generally speaking, broadly speaking, they're not truly random. They are randomish. They're random enough. But if you knew the seed and you knew the algorithm that was in use, you could potentially reverse engineer what the next number is going to be because it's all just that way. So the shirt, I'm not sure it's a pink shirt. I think it's more orange, but my white balance is not great in here. In fact, the colors on this camera are different than the colors on this camera. They're 2 different kinds of cameras. Yes, I could calibrate them, but I tried, and it's a little more difficult than just saying, oh, turn that one down. Okay, you're done. So that's just the way it works. This one is more, I would say it's more peach. I would say it's more of an orangey peach, I think. I think it is. I'm not sure that's true. I think it might be, I don't think it's pink though. Well, it's pink enough though, right? It's pinkish. I wanted something bright and happy today, so that's the one I grabbed. I don't plan these things. I just sort of, what's clean? Oh, this one is. I'll grab that one. And it worked out. I have recently, and you've probably noticed over the last couple of months, now there's a whole, I've rotated in a new set of shirts. So I have to buy shirts just for live streams, and then I have to not wear them any other time but when I'm doing a live stream, which is kind of not great. I have to work through that. Diablo 4 is what I'm playing on the Xbox right now. Diablo 3, still a great game. It's kind of sad because a lot of my kind of off times I do in a chair. I want to not be sitting up in front of a screen. I want to be leaning back in front of a screen. And that's sort of the way it works. That's because I'm in here. I get into the studio at 6 or 7 in the morning, and then I'm here until 5 or 6. So it's, I like to say I work half days. 8 to 8, 7 to 7, something like that. And I'm trying to parse that down. I'm trying to bring that down a little bit, but it's difficult. Like right now, there's a lot of content being generated right now. You don't see it yet, but you will. And because what happens is it's very cyclical. It's very much based on a seasonal type arrangement where nothing happens and then suddenly a lot of things happen and then it goes back down to nothing happening again, or at least seems that way to you. But the reality is here I'm constantly creating content, whether it's the daily pop quiz questions, whether I'm writing another book, whether it's another course needs to be updated. There's always something that's in the queue. And if there's nothing in the queue, I need to put something there to create some more content and more training material. So there's always something to do. And so I'm right now spending a lot of time in the studio creating content because there's this big project going on right now that I want to get done by the end of the year. Isn't that crazy? I'm kind of thinking now, we've got 7 months left until the end of the year. I'm already thinking about what do I need to do today so that will be done by the end of the year. So that's sort of where my head is. So I'm never in a place where I could say, okay, we're done. We finished, everybody. There is no finish. There is none of that. So I just keep doing it. I have to worry about it. Oh, and tomorrow it's a holiday in Brazil. That sounds, which holiday is it? I don't know if it translates or if I understand it at all, but I'm interested. So we do not have a holiday tomorrow here in the United States. So we had one last week. We'll work. CISA Plus in the oven? No, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, CISA Plus is not currently one of those things that I'm currently working on. Sorry. Doesn't count down until Starfield. Yes, Starfield looks interesting. I can't wait to see that. Well, I purchased a new Vision Pro. It will be very, very difficult to talk me out of it. I'm watching the reviews. You know, immediately when tech comes out, I go watch Marquez and he tells me what I should do. But this time he told me advantages, disadvantages, and I'm on the fence. I don't know. I keep thinking I'll wait till the next rev. I think the first rev is the developer rev. The next rev will be lighter and more capable. Even if it isn't more capable, I think lighter would be good. They have not released the Vision Pro. They've announced it. It will not be released until I think the end of the year, right? I'm on the list. If you go to the website and you click on it and you want to buy it, they say, well, you could sign up to get an email that will tell you about it, but we don't have anything for you right now. We got to let the developers write stuff first, and that will be intriguing. What are they going to come out with on this remarkably capable piece of hardware? And will it be worthwhile to have the hardware? And what am I going to do with it? So there's lots of questions. Do I want to spend the money? And if I spend the money, does it work? It could be no more monitors, but the operating system is not Mac OS, although it can mirror a Mac OS screen, which, okay, I'm back in. See how this works? Right now, though, we need to do a live stream. Let's get the keynote up and running. Let's make sure everybody's good here. It's 12 noon in my world. Let's get started with this. I think we're in pretty good shape. We'll prep our graphic and let's go. And before we do that, just so you know, I am working on things on the side. I'm moving windows around. Basically, my whole life is moving windows around. So let me move some windows around. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2023 Professor Messer 220-1102. That is our Core 2 A+ study group. Has lots of different names, but it all comes down to that second exam in the list of Core 1 and Core 2 that you will need to pass to earn your A+ certification. I'm James Messer. In this first hour, I will be taking you through a bunch of brand new questions that I've created specifically for the Core 2 exam. These are topics that come directly from the Core 2 exam objectives. We'd love for you to join us. If you are here live watching us, you can participate with us in real time by simply visiting this URL, pop open a new browser window, and go to professormesser.com/QA. There'll be a question waiting for you on the screen. We also have an app that you could use for this because, of course, there's an app for this. Go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative student app. That is the name of the app. We use a service called Socrative to provide that real-time voting and answering method. So if you download that and use it, the only thing that if you use the app, it will ask you for a name of the room. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER, which is also now my Discord username. Finally got the username in there. So there's a timely reference for those of you watching this a year from now. Yesterday was the day I got my permanent, allegedly, Discord user ID of Professor Messer, and got it before the other Professor Messers out there. It turns out there's a lot of Professor Messers at the universities and colleges around the world. So I'm fighting for the names. So we're good. I have a question for you, just so you can see how this works. If you are in Socrative, I have a question waiting for you that's from last month. So last month, the question that is asked, which of the following would provide data integrity for a drive image taken after a security incident? Now, this question is one that we would answer online by visiting the URL you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. So which of the following would provide data integrity for a drive image taken after a security incident? Would that be to securely delete the original drive? Would it be to store the original drive and the drive image in different locations? Would it be to take a picture of the breached system's display? Would it be hash the drive image file? Or would it be to create a new working drive from the image? So we'll talk more about what we think that answer is in a moment. Again, if you think you know the answer, you want to answer online at that URL, professormesser.com/QA. Again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to come back to that question in just a moment. And right now, though, I'd like to thank you for being here. For those of you that are here live, thank you for joining us, setting the time on your watch, setting your calendar up, letting you know when we are going to be online. We really appreciate you being here. And if you're watching this on a replay, you can also follow along with what we're doing. Although you can always check the calendar to know when the next live event is going to be. We'd love to have you here and chatting with the folks in the chat room. In the meantime, when we're not live and online, you can visit our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe at professormesser.com/YouTube. You can also get a daily A+ pop quiz question, either for the Core 1 or Core 2, depending on the day. You can find those at professormesser.com/Twitter. And if you like your questions with a pretty picture, you can find it at professormesser.com/Instagram. And I think I just mentioned our Discord. I'll mention it again in a moment. It's professormesser.com/Discord. So wherever you're trying to find us, just type in professormesser.com/ and the name of the service. And if we're there, you'll find us there. It's just that easy. There are 2 A+ exams that you have to complete before you can call yourself A+ certified. These 2 exams are the 220-1101 and 220-1102. Those are the version numbers of these exams. We colloquially call these the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. These exams were released on April the 20th of 2022, so they're only just about a year old, just over at this point. That means that if we do the math and we know that these retire somewhere around 1.5 or 3.5 years after they are released, that puts the exam retirement somewhere around October or November of 2025. As we get closer to that date, we will know more about what time frame that happens to be, but I think that's a pretty good estimate. Well, the good part is if you're here in June of 2023, you've got plenty of time to study these exams. You're studying exactly the right version. This is exactly the content that will be asked of you on the most recent exams. As we get closer to that date, though, make sure you make a note of that. You may need to study from newer materials once that date happens to occur at this point well into the future. The exam that we're going to be talking about today is the 220-11-02. You need to earn a 700 score. The scoring range is between 100 and 900, so the 700 is pretty up there. You have to be sure you get at least that number. Now, they don't tell you how the exams are graded. You just kind of have to take the exam and do your best, and hopefully the number at the end is going to be a 700. Once you pass your exam, it's good for 3 years. So it doesn't really matter about these versions of exams because once you take the exams and pass them, you're done with the exam part. All you have to worry about is renewing your certification every 3 years, and you're in good shape. We're going to talk about the 220-11-02. That's the number that's right there under my shoulder. You can't see it. But we're going to talk today about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. And I'll try to hit from every single one of those very large domains during this live stream. We've also got a replay of this live stream available on YouTube immediately after we are done. I hit the stop button and it takes a minute or two to render, and then it's available on my channel. I also upload a podcast audio only version to my site. And if you have a podcast listening program and you'd like to add us to your podcast, you can do that at professormesser.com/podcast. There is also a video replay of this available on YouTube. And if you wait about a day, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will almost magically be updated. Well, it is magic. And that magic is brought to you by my marketing manager, Lori. She's watching the video now. Hey, Lori. She is going through and probably at 2x speed, putting down all of the timestamps for the things that happened during this 2-hour event. So as we are looking at this, we can go back to previous versions. We can go years back and find exactly the information we might be looking for on any of these videos. That's my YouTube video description, and you can probably find that about a day later. I mentioned earlier about Discord. This is where we're usually hanging out in Discord after the live streams are over. There are a lot of great people on this Discord. It's a great community, folks that are actively studying for their certifications, folks that have already earned their certifications and can answer questions up to the point of their candidate agreement anyway, but they can tell you a little bit about what to expect on this exam and can talk about different technologies. It's a great place to hang out. Make sure you join us. You can find it at professormesser.com/discord, or simply go to the side of the website. On the top of my website at the far right top are a set of icons for the social media. You can find it there as well. Lots to look at on the Discord. I also mentioned that eventually you will need to take an exam, and that exam is one that you can pay full price over at the CompTIA website to take, or you can visit professormesser.com/vouchers if you happen to live in the U.S. or Canada or a number of U.S. territories and get a discounted voucher. So why would you pay full price on the CompTIA website when it can be discounted already on the Professor Messer website? Those discounted vouchers are available for any of the CompTIA exams. So whether you're taking A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, CISA Plus, Data Plus, or any of the others, those are all of them listed there on the screen. They are available for you. But not only do you get a discount from what's available on the CompTIA website, I also throw in for free my CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook that gives you tips and tricks on how to study and how to take the CompTIA exams. I give you a few tips in there that might give you a few extra points during the exam itself. And who wouldn't want a few extra points on their exam? This all comes together when you purchase a voucher, and it's something you can't buy separately. I don't sell the Exam Hacks ebook separately. The only way to get it is with one of my success bundles or when you purchase a voucher. That's on my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question I asked earlier. The question again was, which of the following would provide data integrity for a drive image taken after a security incident? Would it be to securely delete the original drive? Would it be to store the original drive and the drive image in different locations? Would it be to take a picture of the breached system's display? Would it be to hash the drive image file, or would it be to create a new working drive from the image? Let's see what you chose in this list. We'll show the results. And 64% of you say you would hash the drive image file to provide data integrity. But 17% say you store the original drive and the drive image in different locations. There you go. That handles integrity, doesn't it? We'll find out in a moment. We have 9% that said securely delete the original drive, and 8% say to create a new working drive from the image. 1% and only 1% of you say take a picture of the breached system's display, which there are great reasons to take a picture of the display, but providing data integrity is not one of those. So the 1% of you, not quite right there with what you wanted to do. If you are in the situation where you are trying to take a picture of this drive, or at least get a snapshot of what's on the drive, this happens all the time when you're trying to collect data. You would create a copy of the drive bit for bit or byte for byte, sector by sector, if you will, and copy every single bit of information that happens to be on every sector of that storage device. We would normally remove that drive and put it into a special piece of hardware that can do that, especially one that might have a write blocker on it, because we don't want to modify anything on this drive. That allows us to image the system without booting up a computer and potentially changing the data that's on the drive itself. Software imaging tools work, but the real important part is, how do you know once you've imaged it if anything changes on that drive between the time you imaged it and the time that you're evaluating the data? There needs to be some way to guarantee that nothing on that drive has changed. And if something does change on that drive, you need to have a test to help you identify that the integrity has been compromised. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the most common ways, and it's really built into quite a few types of forensic software that does the drive image, is to create hashing. So we can hash the information on the drive. We can then put the drive away. And then if we come back years later and grab another image of the drive, the hashes should be identical. And that allows us to immediately know if anything has changed on that drive at all, because we can compare the hashes now to the hashes we took a year ago. That's the important part of this. That's the part that provides the integrity. And that's why hashing the drive image file, the 68% of you that answered D, got that one absolutely correct. Now, 15% of you say store the original drive and the drive image in different locations, which seems to make sense. You've got them separated. But what happens if you suddenly think that the image, the data that's on the image, might have been changed? Well, if you go back to the original drive, you can see that the information is different. Well, if there really is difference between the drive image and the original drive, which one was changed? Therein lies the problem, is that you don't know if the original drive still has the same integrity it had back when you took the original image. So that's the important part of this one, is that separating these two into different locations doesn't help you maintain integrity of the original data. That's what you always want to be able to do. We've got 9% of you that said securely delete the original drive. Boy, that would be a large breach of integrity. You're deleting everything on the original drive. You just destroyed the evidence. That's not going to help you very much. Please don't do that. You also have 7% that said create a new working drive from the image. That is something that we commonly do when we're performing forensics of these devices, is we take a copy of the data and then we work from the copy. That makes perfect sense. But working from the copy doesn't do anything to maintain integrity of the original drive. So although we are probably going to create a new working drive from the image, it doesn't help us make sure that the original data remains untouched. In this case, that means that the only answer that makes any sense is answer D. hash the drive image file. If you got that one right, you either remembered from last month, or maybe you did remember this. Maybe it's something that is now locked in. So if you do get a question about this on your exam, you can easily choose to hash the drive image file to provide that type of integrity. So now that we've gotten into our Q&A, we know the system works, we know that we can lock in our answer, I want to give you another answer. Everything from this point on, brand new. Brand new questions. You've never seen them before. These are questions that I write every month so that we can really look at different aspects of what people might be asking about, or different topics that people have sent to me that said they want to know more about on the exam. I like to have the very first new question of the study group, though, be very similar to the very first set of questions you get on your exam. Those first set of questions on your exam are not multiple choice questions. The one we just did, that was a multiple choice question because there were questions there with a multiple answers to select from. But what CompTIA will do is at the very beginning of the exam, they give you a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. They are anything but multiple choice. So they might be fill in the blank. They might be a matching question. They might be drag and drop. There's all kinds of questions and ways to ask these questions. But the fortunate part is that everything that's in these performance-based questions are topics that come directly from the exam objectives. So they're not asking you about something you don't know about. They're simply asking you the same information in a different way. So I have for you our performance-based question of the day. This performance-based question is a matching question that says match the command to the description. And I have for you 4 commands, but I have 6 descriptions. This means that we have a 1-to-1 relationship, and 2 of these will be left over at the end. And if you wanted maybe extra credit, think about what commands you might use to perform those 2 that were left over. So let's go through first the 4 different commands that I've chosen this month. They are robocopy, pathping, gpresult, and sfc. Those are the 4 commands. And for those of you listening on the podcast, I want to go through all 6 of the different descriptions. They are verify the availability of a device, view the policy settings on a device, view Ethernet and connection metrics, duplicate data from one storage drive to another, confirm all system files are original, and document network routes and test response times. So this would be good to be able to figure out what this happens to be. So hopefully we can get some familiarity with the data that's on here. Now, what I try to do, this is very similar to the drag and drop or the matching question I did a year ago, but the content's different. So I switch up the different names and the different utilities here. So you may think this looks similar, but it's all actually brand new. It's all new stuff. And of course, everything that's on here is listed in the exam objectives. So even if you don't recognize one of these, make sure you go back to the exam objectives or your study materials or the videos and go through any of the topics that perhaps you don't know or you don't recognize, or maybe you'd like a little more information on. A lot of good stuff there. So hopefully that's something that can help you. So I'm going to plug this in so that you can now input the answers into Socrative and be able to break down what you think the answer is. If you think the answers are already in order, simply type in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. You don't have to type the whole thing. You just have to put the letters and the numbers in. I will tell you, it's not 1A, 2B, 3C, 4C, 4D. That's not it. So that's the real key, is have a look at what these different utilities are, have a look at the different descriptions, and see if you can break those out too. I'm going to mess around with a little bit of my cabling here in the back while we're doing this. We'll figure out the details. As always, of course, please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We're going to go through and remove some of those so that nobody can see those as we're going through. We've got a lot of content in this particular first half of the live stream, but this is probably the one with the most amount of selections and different things to choose from, and that's pretty common for a performance-based question. There's a lot of information here. This could easily be 4 different questions, but instead it's one question, with 4 different options. Another common question with these is that you could get some of these right and some of these wrong when we go through the final answers. But do you get partial credit, or is the whole thing wrong, or do you get anything? Do you have to get all 4 of them correct to earn a point? And CompTIA says maybe or maybe not. They have definitively said on their website maybe. For what that's worth. They don't explain or give any information about their grading process, but they do say that there are times when they do provide partial credit, but they just don't tell you when those times are. That's the real problem. So let's see if you knew what these particular commands are. Let's match these up and see if you know what these can provide for you. We'll start with the very first one on our list, which is robocopy. So much for my big reveal here. We're just going to go through all of them very quickly so we can get through them. Robocopy was the first one. We matched that to D, duplicate data from one storage drive to another. That's perfect for robocopy. That's exactly the way that works. A very capable program with tons of different options inside. I often describe it as the perfect copy utility for very big files that are transferring across a wide area network that may be prone to outages, because it will recognize when an outage occurs, it will wait for the network to come back up, and then it will continue with the copy process. Not all copy commands can do that. So robocopy, which of course is short for robust copy, it's not a robot, it's robust. That's what's going on there. We've also got questions about path ping. Path ping we've matched to F, document network routes and test response times. Path ping is a lot like having a trace route and a ping command in the same place. So that's why if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out, what do I do with this? Where does this come from? Can I get a list of all of the different hops from here to there and then determine what response times are for each of those hops? Yes, you can. And you would do that with path ping. Another utility you might want to use is GP result. GP result is your group policy results. It shows you the list of policies that have been applied to a system so that you can see if the latest set of policies that you've put into your Active Directory group policy settings are being applied properly on the device that you're working with. So GP result is a great way to see that data so you can really understand what the different options might be. We've also got answer number 4 for SFC. SFC, the System File Checker, is what that stands for. And it will go through all of your system files. These are generally your Windows, your core Windows files, and go through all of the files to determine which one of these might have been changed since the time that it was installed. So something like malware might go in and corrupt system files. You can use SFC to evaluate every single one of those and determine, is this really working properly? SFC is a great utility for that. You should be using it to confirm that your base Windows configuration really is working with the files that you would be expecting to see in the operating system, and make sure that nobody's modified any of those. Well, that means we have 2 that are left over. We have verify the availability of a device and view Ethernet and connection metrics. So what could we use to verify the availability of a device other than to go over to it and hit the keyboard and see if the screen lights up? We could use a utility for that, and one very good utility to check the availability is ping, P-I-N-G. One ping only. We can go and verify that device is there. Is it alive? That device is there. It will ping and give us a response back, assuming there was something not turned off or something that was firewalled between you and that device. Ping is probably one of the first things we use when we're troubleshooting the network. Let me see if I can ping it. We'll type that in. Hopefully we get a response. And if we don't, we know where to go next. And the last command in our list was view Ethernet and connection statistics. What would we use to view the Ethernet and connection metrics? Well, a great utility for that is one called NetStat. Well, or you can have a look at the next question. NetStat. NetStat's a utility available in Windows, Linux, Mac OS that can show you the network statistics, literally NetStat. That's why I had to use metrics at the end, not to throw that in there, but that's one I didn't want to give away too much. NetStat's a great tool to do that. These are not the only tools to provide this functionality, but they are the only ones available in, or listed, if you will, in the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with those. If you don't recognize any of these, you may want to have a look at the two different options of the 220.11.02 section 1.2 Windows command line tools and the Windows network command line are the two videos I used to create this particular content. So that would be a great place to do that. So a question in the chat room, some folks are saying, well, how is ipconfig different than netstat? ipconfig can tell you information about the IP configuration, the IP address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, the assigned DNS servers that are on your system. But what if you wanted to know who's connecting to my system? To what systems am I connecting to? What is the routing table inside of my system? What other types of network statistics can I gather based on the traffic going in and out of that interface? That's where netstat comes in. Netstat can tell you all about how that particular system may be communicating, who it's communicating to, what applications are being used to create that communication. You can very often find very interesting things inside of netstat. You may not have even realized that a particular application was communicating to that particular IP address, but netstat would show you all of that. So it's kind of a real-time network monitor to show exactly what's going on right now with network communication. Those are the commands in the descriptions. Robocopy duplicates data from one storage drive to another. Pathping documents network routes and tests network response times. GPResult allows you to view the policy settings on a device. SFC allows you to confirm all system files are original. And then we decided that ping is a great way to verify the availability of a device, and netstat is a great way to view Ethernet and connection metrics. So hopefully that's giving you some perspective on things you might want to know about. Again, if you don't recognize any of those, make sure you go back to your exam objectives. That can be extremely useful to know these commands, and that's not the only set of them. There's a lot of other commands there you need to know about, and make sure you know all of them that are listed there. Before we go to our first our first new multiple choice based question, we have a lot of folks that are sending in some super chats today. I want to scroll up because I missed a few yesterday and it makes me angry when I miss them. Let me thank O'Brien Ortega for the $5 super chat, who says passed Security Plus last week. Congratulations. All thanks to you, Professor. Not the case because you took the exam. I didn't. You have been a huge help in my success. I'll take that much credit. Have you thought about teaching Cloud Plus? Well, I've thought about it. I don't know if Cloud Plus is in my future, but a cloud-based training would be great. Whichever one it would be, I think it'd be fun to do a cloud-based training. Thank you so much for the super chat as well, and congratulations on your Security Plus. Defense 2100 with a $5 super chat. Hello, Prof. Passed my A Plus and Network Plus and Security Plus thanks to your materials. It's helped me qualify for more opportunities. It absolutely will. And I'm glad to hear that it's doing that. Congratulations on all three. You got the trifecta of the A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Also, thank you for the $5 super chat as well. And lastly, let me very quickly, I try not to do a lot of these super chats in the live stream, but we'll make sure we get all the questions in today. Sarah says, I passed my 1101 on May 20th. Congratulations on your Core 1. Thank you so much for providing the resources that helped me do this. And another $5 super chat. Thanks so much. You know, I often say it's not necessary to provide any super chats. I generally don't take donations, although I do take super chats and super thanks on the videos. But it's just another way to help keep the lights on in here and keep this entire process going. So you really are focusing and really jumping on what is really the foundation of what we do here. Without your help, we would not be able to do this. So thank you so much. Let's do a question now. Let's jump over to another multiple choice based question. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way to integrate a wireless network with Radius? Would we use WPA3 Enterprise, EFS, SAE, IPsec, or HTTPS? It's got to be one of those, right? Which of the following would be the best way to integrate a wireless network with Radius? Would it be WPA3 Enterprise, EFS, SAE, IPsec, or HTTPS? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. There's the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. think that's a good place to go for these. One of the things I think that that I have been working on with this is trying to get questions for you that go a couple of extra steps into the process. And I think this is a pretty good one. I'm not asking you about radius. I'm asking you about how you would implement radius. And on your exam, you will find a lot of questions are this way. You don't get a lot of flashcard questions on the exam where they say, here's radius, what's radius stand for? You'll never get a question like that. You'll never get a question asking you to spell out an acronym. Those are way too easy. Those are flashcard questions. Those are very trivial type questions. So no trivia questions on the exam. Instead, you'll get questions like this that expect you to already know what radius is. And instead, they're asking you, how do you use it? What do you do to make that happen? So that's the one I think is the most important focus here, is making that happen. And understanding the underlying technologies. And I think the more you know about the underlying technologies, everything else will make a lot more sense. So if you know your answer, lock it in. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to see if you know what that one is. There's a couple of good options in here. By the way, I didn't make up any of these words. They're all real words. They're all real acronyms. They are all from your exam objectives. I try to do that with all the questions. And when I give you a question where I've made up a word, I always tell you afterwards. That doesn't happen very much because I think it's important for what we're doing here, our studies, is that we are trying to get you to a point to recognize these terms and how they are used. And in some ways, slightly emulate a flavor of what the exam might be like. I don't focus too much on creating those types of questions that are really specific to the exam, but I think these come pretty close to doing that in our live streams. That's really the idea. So let's now kind of move our view of this and see what you think the answer is. The question again asks, which of the following would be the best way to integrate a wireless network with radius? Would we use WPA3 Enterprise, EFS, SAE, IPsec, or HTTPS? Let's see what you chose. Get rid of that graphic so we can view your results. 65%, that's a pretty good percentage, say that the answer is WPA3 Enterprise. We have 14% that say you would use IPsec. 10% of you say SAE. 5% say HTTPS. And I almost a tie with that. 4% say EFS. Well, if you're somebody who's trying to integrate radius, you've got a wireless network, and you want people not to have a single shared passphrase that's used across the organization. That's just bad security. Instead, you want to set up some type of authentication that is specific to a user. That way, if somebody moves to a different department, they go outside the organization, they leave the company, we want to turn off their access, and turning off that access should also turn off their ability to connect to these wireless networks. And if everybody's sharing the same passphrase, you don't have that level of control. So we want people to log in with their normal username and password, the one they use for everything, for their Windows desktop, for their VPN login, and for their wireless network. And Radius is one of those technologies that allows us to centralize the authentication for all of these very different types of services. If you have a system set up where there's just no security at all, it's an open system. We've seen wireless networks like this. Hopefully you don't see a lot of these anymore. But if the system is completely open, then you can see all of the data going over that network. Hopefully you're using a VPN if you're using an open system that happens to be wireless. There's also the option to have a key that everyone will share. I mentioned earlier that's not very great for corporations, but it might be perfect for your house. When somebody stopped by, they go, oh, let me get on your wireless network. What's your wireless password? And they're really referring to the PSK, or the pre-shared key. And you probably see within your wireless software that there's an option there for a pre-shared key. Sometimes it's called personal, sometimes it's called keys, and you can determine there what the different password might be. But in a corporate environment, in a large organization, we're going to want everyone to use their own authentication credentials. And in that case, we would use the enterprise version of WPA2 or WPA3, hopefully the newer ones. You may also see this written as WPA2 or WPA3 802.1x, which is, of course, why would we make it easy to understand? We would want to put the IEEE standard for this authentication method into the name of the configuration. So if you've ever seen this before, 802.1x, that's what they're referring to, is a type of enterprise authentication, most often integrated with a third-party directory services like Radius. So you could use Radius, you could use LDAP, you could use Kerberos, you could use whatever that wireless access point can support to be able to provide the check of the username and password. That wireless security mode is a useful one, is important, and it's one very common if you are in an office and maybe you've already at work, you already know that when you hit the wireless network, it prompts you to log in. That's because they've turned on WPA3 or WPA2 Enterprise and are using 802.1x to make that happen. That is the answer we were looking for. WPA3 Enterprise is one of those options, and that indeed would be the best way to integrate Radius or any type of directory services into the authentication of our wireless network. 67% of you chose that one. That is the right answer. But what about these others? 14% of you said IPsec. IPsec is certainly a popular way to encrypt data going across a network. IPsec is usually used from a site-to-site configuration over a public network like the internet. So you could have a remote site located many states away, maybe many countries away, and you would be able to encrypt all of the data between your site and that site over the internet using a technology such as IPsec. IPsec is not the technology, though, that would allow you to integrate Radius onto your wireless network. It's not something we commonly even see on wireless unless we're then connecting to something else from our wireless network. We've got 10% of you that say the answer is SAE. This is a new method of authentication built into WPA3. It's one that ensures that simultaneous access for people that want to share a key on the wireless network, but not send that key across the network. You can think of SAE as a way to take the Diffie-Hellman, the idea of Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and bring it down into a more intelligent way to transfer keys over a wireless network. But that does not allow you to integrate that wireless network with Radius. That only allows you to have an encryption key that can be shared between you and the access point. We have also 5% of you that say HTTPS. HTTPS is not something that you would use on a wireless network to integrate that with Radius. It is used, obviously, to encrypt data going to a web server, but in this case, we're not talking about encrypting to a web server. We're talking about wireless encryption and wireless authentication. And lastly, we have EFS, the encrypting file system. EFS is useful for encrypting individual files or folders in the Windows operating system, specifically using NTFS as your file system. And it's great for encrypting that data, but it has nothing to do with wireless networks or integrating the wireless network authentication with a third party or external system for data storage for directory services. So those are our different options. You can see the other options don't really match what we're trying to do. The only one that makes any sense is answer A, WPA3 Enterprise. 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. This next question asks, a Windows laptop is starting in safe mode instead of the normal desktop. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would we want to update the BIOS, remove the bootloader, run startup repair, restore from a known good backup, or reinstall Windows? A Windows laptop is starting in safe mode instead of the normal desktop. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Is that update the BIOS, remove the bootloader, run startup repair, restore from a known good backup, or reinstall Windows? If you think you know the answer, you can lock it in right here. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You're doing a pretty good job of that so far. I apologize for repeating it constantly. That's sort of the way it works for me. I want to thank also Reading Adam on the chat for $10 super chat. Reading Adam, no comments with that. There might have been one that flew by here. It's difficult to back up and see those when we're getting into them. But the We sure do appreciate your support. Thank you for the $10 super chat, and thank you for joining us on the live stream. It's always nice to have folks there. Some folks are mentioning they are trying to find the latest A+ for 2023. Well, fortunately, the A+ does not update itself when the calendar changes. It updates itself about every 3 years. The current version of the A+ exams are the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. So you need to check your study materials, and if they clearly state that they are for the 220-1101 or the 220-1102, you're using the latest ones. So that makes it easy. Can't go wrong there. Let's see how you did with this question, though. It asked, a Windows laptop is starting in safe mode instead of the normal desktop. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Should you update the BIOS, remove the bootloader, run startup repair, restore from a known good backup, or reinstall Windows? Now, these are your only options available. Now, you might have thought in your mind, I do something completely different. I think the best next troubleshooting step would be to do this, except that wasn't the question. The question said, which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? And this is very commonly done on the exam because they want you to only choose from what's available. And there will certainly be times in your career where you might want to do something, but you don't have access to do that, or you're specifically forbidden from doing that, or there's another group within the organization that does that. You're not one who can even touch those things. You have a list, you have 5 different things you could do. Which of those 5 things is the best one? That's what they're really asking you. It's just hard to put all of those words into a single question. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's show the results, and we can see that 73% of you say run startup repair. We've also got 16% that say restore from a known good backup, 11% say update the BIOS, 1% to remove the bootloader, and another 1% say reinstall Windows. What's interesting about this question and the answers is that there are multiple answers here that could potentially solve this problem. But that wasn't the question. The question asked, which would be the best next troubleshooting step? And in this case, 72% say you would run startup repair. Well, the reason you would probably want to run startup repair is because it's really quick in how it operates. It's fast. It only takes a few minutes to run. It can solve a number of startup problems, whether you're missing a bootloader, you're missing some system files, there's something in the startup process that is glitching, and everything is just booting to safe mode constantly. This process of running startup repair could potentially repair what's there without changing any of your user data, without causing you or requiring you to install new software, without having you make any configuration changes. You've literally changed nothing on the system except what the startup repair might do. And usually the startup repair gets into the internals of the startup process much easier than something that you would need to do. Because normally you would have to go into a safe mode, a command prompt view. You'd have to drill down into a service. You'd have to look at all the registry entries. Instead, it's all automated. It's all set up for you. Startup repair is a remarkable utility, and it can very quickly resolve the most common problems with startup. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to fix it, but if you had to choose between these 5 things of what you would do first, that is the best option here because it changes nothing with your system data, your user data. It doesn't require you to make any specific changes or type anything in. You just say, go, run the startup repair, and it goes to run it right from the startup process. And I show a demonstration of that, or I show how that works in the videos if you want to go back and look at them. But what about these other options? 15% of you say restore from a known good backup. And if the startup repair didn't work, that would probably be a good place to go because you're restoring from something you know works properly. But that takes time. It requires you to have a backup. And of course, if you're restoring over data, you could potentially be losing data that had been changed since the time the backup was made. So you could potentially lose data by restoring from a known good backup. And it takes a long time to do this relative to just simply running a startup repair. That's probably not going to be your best starting point. Can you imagine every time somebody called, they go, I'm having a problem logging in. Oh, we need to restore your system from a known good backup. Wait, can you just check my password first? Nope. We're restoring from a known good backup. It seems like a jump, doesn't it? let's maybe do some other things first that are easier, quicker, and might resolve the issue. So restoring from a known good backup could potentially be where we get to, but we're not there yet. We also have options here to update the BIOS. 10% of you chose that option. In the case of updating the BIOS, first, updating the BIOS is something that you really rarely do. We talk a lot about it in this training course because it is a part of the troubleshooting process, and there are things you can resolve by updating a BIOS, especially in certain situations. But the BIOS itself is something you would rarely update. It certainly would not cause Windows to start up in a safe mode. Otherwise, we would be spending all of our time updating the BIOS on all of our systems every time there was some type of login issue. And obviously, we're not doing that, which would lead us to believe that perhaps the BIOS has nothing to do with the Windows startup process. And generally speaking, you would be correct. It doesn't. Updating the BIOS is not going to resolve your problem of booting into safe mode. It's not going to modify anything with the Windows setup. All it's going to do is make sure you're running the latest BIOS, which in most cases isn't going to have any discernible difference to the end user or yourself. And it is kind of a risky maneuver on a number of systems because there may only be one flash available on that system, and you're overriding an existing flash. You want to be sure the power doesn't go out in the middle of updating the BIOS. There's a lot of things you could cause to go wrong by updating the BIOS. So before you make a change like that, wouldn't it be easier just to run startup repair? Yes, it would. And that's why we keep going back to that answer. Lastly, 1% said remove the bootloader and 1% say reinstall Windows. Similar issue there. Removing the bootloader, that would be a bad idea because the system would not boot at that point. Your system would not know where to go to load the Windows operating system. You would not want to remove your bootloader. You might overwrite the bootloader, but our problem here is not booting the system. Our problem is once we boot it, it goes into safe mode. That's our issue. So the bootloader isn't even involved in this particular problem. Why would we make any changes to it? And lastly, reinstall Windows. 1% of you say to reinstall Windows. Again, that's a lot of detail. That's a lot of work to do. It's time consuming, assuming we even have, where's our Windows install disk? And now we're deleting everything on the system because we reinstalled Windows. There are ways to reinstall Windows without deleting the entire system, but again, that's very time consuming. So yes, reinstalling Windows could fix this. Restoring from a known good backup could fix this. Updating the BIOS and removing the bootloader probably wouldn't fix this at all. And then running startup repair would also potentially fix this. And because running startup repair doesn't change any of your user data, and it's a configuration option that runs in a matter of minutes, that's a good place to start. You know, most of the time, I think we've gotten into this mode where if it's automated, it must not be good. But I've had startup repair actually resolve a number of problems for me. They've gotten really good at startup repair because this is a number of iterations. This is not a brand new utility. It's been in Windows for a number of different versions, and they've gotten really good at it. So that would be my first choice. That should be your first choice. And if you answered C, run startup repair, you got this one absolutely correct. So as we're going through these questions, you may have noticed that there are a lot of questions in this exam across a lot of different topics, whether it's networking or security or operating systems and Mac OS and Linux and command lines and understanding the hardware and what's on the motherboard and the memory and the storage drives. It's extensive, obviously, because there are 137 videos in my A+ courses, over 19 hours of content. That's a lot of content. That's a lot of videos just for someone to have to watch. And I realize that a number of you will go through all 137 videos, but one of the challenges you have is capturing that information from the videos. And many of you just don't have time to go through 137 videos, and I recognize that as well. So I've taken everything that's in my videos and I brought them into a single document, one single place that you can go to find everything you need. These are my course notes. And I've taken a summary from, or not just a summary, but everything that is written on all of my videos, all of the charts, all of the graphics that I've created, all of the explanations of these, the command lines, they're all listed in these course notes, video by video, section by section, in the same structure as the CompTIA exam objectives, which makes it very easy to find exactly what you're looking for. These are in a digital format. You can also get them in a physical format. There's the physical edition. They're obviously identical to the digital edition. But one difference is that it's in a printed book, something you can take along with you and read even when you're not in front of a computer. You can choose to purchase the digital edition PDF and download it immediately after purchase. And if you purchase the physical edition, I print and send this to you. And if you get the physical version, I give you the digital version for free. So it's a little bonus if you get the physical edition of these. They are available on my website. You can have a look, see what's there. Go to professormesser.com/1102notes or follow the pull-down menus at the top of my site if you're trying to find exactly what you might want to look at for study materials, something that might help. And of course, this is also a great way to support what we do on the site, because every dollar of that goes back into keeping the lights on, doing these live streams, and creating even more content in the future. So have a look at those, professormesser.com/1102notes for my A+ course notes. Let's do some more questions. Next one on our list. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way for a user to request technical help with Windows? That's not the one I have on my screen here. I'm looking at the question that I just brought up on my screen. It's completely different of what I have here, which is kind of normal for me, by the way. The question you will see, which is actually the same question in a different format, which on your screen probably shows on Socrative, which of the following would be the best way to control a remote Windows desktop screen, which is not really the right question. The right question is, which of the following would be the best way for a user to request technical help with Windows? That was what I was shooting for. But that's what happens when you copy and paste too much for these. Don't be confused. I create the confusion on my side, but it's not intentional. Follow what's on your screen here, which says, which of the following would be the best way for a user to request technical help with Windows? Just ignore that question up there. Just pretend that's not there. The possible answers are SSH, Quick Assist, VLC, client-to-site VPN, and RMM. So they are SSH, Quick Assist, VLC, client-to-site VPN, and RMM. Quite a few things to choose from there. Let's see if you know this particular answer and what it is. This is an interesting, I was going to give you a hint. I'm not even going to give you a hint. I've already confused you enough. So I'm not going to give you a hint on those. While we're doing that, I want to thank Joseph H. in the chat room with the $10 super chat, who says, taking Core 1 on Monday, your help has been immense, Prof. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it's helped in some way. That's the whole point of doing these. I think that a career in IT is one that gives you opportunities that you don't get in other types or other fields. So good luck with your Core 1. Keep studying, make a list of those, and I think you'll be able to do it again. The question again is, which of the following would be the best way for a user to request technical help with Windows? That's your question. Maybe that's what you get when we start looking at these. This is one where I try to copy and paste and make sure they're all there, but occasionally one slips through, and this is a live event, everyone. We're not doing these. Requesting technical help. Yeah, I guess a smoke signal would not work for that. In fact, let's see if I can get rid of the question entirely. I think I can. Up there. There you go. So the question, which of the following would be the best way for a user to request technical help with Windows? Is that SSH, Quick Assist, VLC, client-to-site VPN, or RMM? Let's see how you answered this one. And we can see that 55% of you chose Quick Assist, 22% said RMM. We've got 9% that say SSH, 6% that say VLC, and 8% that say client-to-site VPN. Well, this sort of revolves around a set of capabilities inside of Windows called the Microsoft Remote Assistance. And this is something that Microsoft put into Windows so that a user could request help from someone else. Those of you that have family members that need technical help, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you don't want to have to deal with telling your family members or the person who's on the other end of the line, well, you need to configure your firewall. I need to allow you the particular port in. I want to be able to do these different things. That it becomes a little bit difficult. So what if the user was the one that makes the request And that process allows you then to be able to use that system. This works remarkably well, by the way. Other folks in the chat room are saying, oh yeah, I use this a lot. This is exceptional in the way they've created this piece. And they present to you, oh yeah, you can send this information as a file, you can email it, you can use Easy Connect. The technician connects using a password provided by the end user, so security is associated with this. And then if you're in Windows 10 or Windows 11, this used to be called Microsoft Remote Assistance, or MSRA. But this is also, and this is important to know, of course, is that Microsoft tends to change these names over time. And even though it's called in the exam objectives Microsoft Remote Assistance, Microsoft changed the name in Windows 10 and Windows 11 and called it Quick Assist. So it wouldn't hurt to know both of those names. And in fact, you might find somebody using Windows 7, Windows 8, even though those are versions of the Windows operating system not supported. That doesn't mean that someone won't use them, as I have found excruciatingly difficult to maintain over time. This happens all the time. To be able to work on those, Quick Assist is what we were looking for, and that indeed is exactly what we have here. It's Quick Assist. That's the ones that can really provide us with more information and really help us get up and running and have the user provide that as a way to get into their own systems. And then once your session is over, you finished helping them, you disconnect, and Quick Assist shuts down on the client's machine. You can't get back in unless you start a new session. So this also protects the end user. They don't have to close up firewall ports. They don't have to remember to disable or turn off certain pieces of software, assuming that they would even know how to do that. And that's one of the big problems when you are working with these systems, is that you would set up remote access and then accidentally leave it on, to which a bad guy, a hacker, an attacker will easily find and use that as a way to get into these systems. Not what you want to do. Certainly not advisable. So Quick Assist works great for something like this. Let's get another question in. I've been talking a lot today, so let me get another question in. First, let me thank Wolf in the chat room who says, got my voucher from your website, Mr. Professor. Thank you so much, Wolf. We do appreciate your support of that. Wolf says, taking my exam on Monday. Wish me luck. As soon as we're done here, I will process my latest set of vouchers. So I'll make sure that gets to you this afternoon so that you'll have that in your email inbox. You'll be able to take the exam, schedule that, and take it wherever you would like. Let's get another question for you. This one, let's see if it's written exactly the same way on my screen as it is on your screen. This question, and it does, this question asks, there it is, which of the following can be used to configure a Windows system for booting without the graphical splash screen? I'm not even going to explain what that means. Which of the following can be used to configure a Windows system for booting without the graphical splash screen? Is that BIOS boot order, user accounts, device manager, system configuration, or power options? Got a few to choose from there. If you know the answer, there's your link, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. You may have even done this before. Some of you do it because you don't want to see the splash screen and you just turn it off and have different information show on the screen. We'll talk about that in a moment too. Also want to thank Ryan in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Ryan says, a year ago, I didn't even realize I wanted to change careers. Thanks to you, I completed my trifecta on Sunday. Endlessly thankful. By the way, used to work in sound for theater. This is always a great stories. I get these stories all the time from people that are moving from one type of job to another. We're rebooting our careers, and IT is a great place to reboot into because, in my mind, there's upward mobility upon upward mobility upon upward mobility. You can have the flexibility, make the money you want to make, and really have a career that has the ability to cover you even when the economy is going up and down and up and down. There's always a need for good technologists. So thank you, Ryan, for the $10 super chat. Congratulations on your trifecta. Best of luck with everything that you do in your career going forward as well. And I have great questions for you about sound for theater and where you worked. And I want to know about the theater events that you worked on and who you met. I have so many questions. I love going to theater. I don't go enough, but it's always fun. I'm planning a trip to New York later in the year, and I want to put something in there. I want to go to at least one show while we're there. It's always fun. So let's see how you did with this question. It asks, which of the following can be used to configure a Windows system for booting without the graphical splash screen? Would you do that in the BIOS boot order? Would you go to user accounts? Would you change something in device manager? Would you make a modification to system configuration? Or would you configure power options? Let's see how you answered this one. I'll click the show results. 56% of you say you would do it in system configuration. 31% of you say you would do it in BIOS boot order. And then you've got 6% that say power options, 4% that said user accounts, and then 2% say device manager. And with 58% of us saying system configuration, I think we're going to have to choose that one as our option for that one. This is where you would go to really make a lot of changes to the way your operating system starts up. So if you want to start troubleshooting your system, you think maybe it has a problem accessing that amount of memory. Maybe we should change the boot process so that we log everything during the boot process so that we can provide that to tech support. You've got all of these options under the boot tab of system configuration. Notice that boot tab allows you to provide a safe boot. So if you want to go into safe mode, you don't have to wait for a problem. You can force Windows into going into a safe mode. We also have no GUI boot. This would be a way to remove that splash screen during startup. And it also show OS boot information during that startup. So not only do you get rid of the splash screen, you can have Windows show you what's loading in the background during that process, when normally we'd be looking at the circle going around in a circle to try to figure it out. But instead, it will show you on the screen exactly what's being loaded and when. This might help with troubleshooting as well, and that's why it's in your system configuration under the boot tab. A number of my Windows systems, I set it up that way without the boot screen and to show me the information, because I think that's more information that I can see during the startup process, and I like having more information presented to me rather than less information. Really something nice to have there. If you want to start that up at the command line, it's msconfig.exe is a great way to work on the system configuration. And that's why 58% of you, absolutely correct in this point, that is the one you should go with. System configuration is the option you're looking for. The option for the BIOS boot order might change the way the BIOS is presented on the screen, but it doesn't stop that Windows splash screen from coming up. So no matter what changes you make to the BIOS, it's not going to change the operating system that loads once the BIOS hands it over to the OS to do everything else on your system. So although the BIOS is in charge of booting, it's Windows that's in charge of showing you the splash screen, and the way you'd modify Windows is with the system configuration. Power options don't provide any option or changes to that screen that you see during boot up. We also have user accounts, which don't provide you with any option for that. And device manager is really there to maintain and manage the hardware drivers on your system. That doesn't change the boot screen either. In this case, the only option that you have available to do that, and we just looked at that option on the screen itself, is system configuration, msconfig.exe. That's what you should be using. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, one of the things that I like to do is send you an email if you watch this video that gives you a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That's a continuing education unit. If you already have your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or you need to collect CEUs for a third-party purpose, I would be glad to provide those to you if you follow these instructions. It's very important to follow these or you don't earn the CEU. Your first step is to go to the Professor Messer website at the Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of the website. So at the very top or at the very bottom, it says Contact Us. Click on that. When you do the Contact Us, it will bring up a form. Put in your name, put in your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2023 Core 2, just so I know what video this came from. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code word of the month, system configuration. The super secret code words of the month are system configuration. And then if you'd like to put anything else in that message, you're more than welcome to. I read through every single one of these. I just like to have that word at the top so I can find it very easily and get that email sent to you with a minimum of effort. Again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, put in the subject line June 2023 Core 2 or something close to that. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, system configuration, and you'll be able to then have to wait for me because it usually takes me about a week or so. Usually I try to do these on the weekend, but it usually takes me a week or so to finally get to these and be able to find exactly what we're looking for. I know we're past the top of the hour, but let's do one more question, shall we? I've got another one in here, and I'm just going to pop open this question that I have, and I'll tell you where this question comes from in just a moment. You'll already notice it's a different kind of format. This is a question from my practice exams. My practice exams are a book, if you haven't seen these before, that has 3 separate practice tests inside of it. 3 90-question practice tests that have both performance-based questions and multiple choice-based questions in the same book. It's a thick book. It's 380 pages with 3 of those in here, a lot in here. Not only do I have questions in here that are specifically written and edited and checked to conform to the 220-1102 exam objectives, I also provide a little bit of extra detail. So let's go through the question that I have here. The question, again, no answers in the chat room. The question asks, an internal audit has found that a server in the DMZ appears to be infected with malware. The malware does not appear to be part of a file in the operating system, and the malware is started each time the system is started. What type of malware would be most likely found on this server? Is it Trojan, ransomware, keylogger, spyware, or a boot sector virus? And if you're using this, you're probably using it in a PDF. You could use the annotation features of your PDF to highlight different options, to write things on the screen. If you're using it with a stylus, you can draw on the book itself because it's all digital. Well, another nice part about this being a PDF is that I've put in these fast links. Normally, you'd have to scroll over to page 33 or scroll down to page 68. We're only on page 12 right now, which means you have to scroll through all of these things. Or you simply use the links that I built in. All you have to do is click the words, the details, and it moves you to page 68. There's our question on page 68, and it tells you the answer is E, boot sector virus, and it tells you why that is the right answer. That's not anything too different than what you might find anywhere else on the internet. But my problem is that when I take tests like this and I get a question wrong, I want to know why my question was wrong, because that will help me understand why the right answer is right. And it will also help me understand more about the selection that I made. So in my practice exams book, every single question has incorrect answers and the description of why that is the incorrect answer. I think that's an important feedback loop for the training process. Helps you not only understand why the right answer is right, but why the wrong answer is wrong. And I will tell you, perhaps more importantly, if you get the answer right, make sure you read through the wrong answers, because on your actual CompTIA exam, your question may not have anything to do with boot sector virus, but they might be asking you about a keylogger or spyware or ransomware, and those wrong answers can help you understand more about why those might be the right answers for the question you get on the actual exam. That's the idea of bringing you full circle around. So every question and every answer to every question is a potential learning opportunity that I see squandered all the time on the internet, but it's not going to be squandered in my practice exams. I think it's a great place to go. Now, if you read the question and you don't even understand what the question is saying, at the very bottom, I give you a link back to the video and the exam objective associated with this question. Where did this question come from? It came from the 220-1102 Objective 2.3, and my video name is Malware, and I even give you links here. If you have the physical book, I give you a QR code so you can use your mobile phone. You can then put your camera in front of it, and it will take you to that video. You can watch it on your phone while you're reading it in your book. So a lot of different options there. And when you're done here, there's a back button that's in practically every PDF reader that I found. And you can go back to where you started and then just go to the next question on the list. Those are my practice exams. You'll find those available on my website in both digital and physical versions. And if you purchase the practice exams alongside the course notes, you actually get a bit of a discount as well. Learn more about that on my website, professormesser.com/core2pe, or you can simply follow the pull-down links at the top of the website page to find the practice exams, the course notes, the success bundles, and much more. Lots to choose from there. Well, I know we are at the top of the hour, but the questions don't stop. The only difference is who asked the questions at this point. And so far, I've been asking the questions this entire time, but I want you to be able to also ask some questions. So stick around for our after show. Before we get there, let me remind you that the exam objectives I've been talking about this whole time are available to download from the CompTIA website for free. These are free objectives. They're incredibly valuable. They're a great checklist to use before you go into the exam. And because you can download them free, I've made a link over to the CompTIA website. There's your link, professormesser.com/objectives. There'll be a link there that takes you over, or use your favorite search engine and just search for CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be the first link and take you right to the page where you can download the latest version of the exam objectives. Never take a direct link to the exam objectives. Always go through the primary link on the CompTIA website, because they do modify pieces of them and update minor spelling issues or issues with certain terms. And it's all updated on their latest version of the objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. Make sure you check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar to know when the next one is going to be. For example, our next A+ study groups are on July 11th and July 13th. We've also got later this month, a week from today, is our Network Plus study group for June. A week from that day is our Security Plus study group for June. And then for July, on July 18th is Network Plus. July 20th would be Security Plus. So there's lots in the hopper. We got lots going on. You can always go to our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, or look at the events calendar in Discord. I make sure those are always up to date. Even when I have to change a date, if you're here live now, you know we had originally scheduled this for tomorrow, but I had to move it back for today because that's how my life is. So I appreciate you being here and being flexible with those time frames. So stick around for the after show. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams. Of course, our vouchers are already discounted and on our website. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. Get them on professormesser.com, along with my free exam hacks ebook. And of course, you can follow us on social media. Simply type in professormesser.com/Discord, /Twitter, /YouTube, or many of the others. They're all available there. I want to thank everybody for being here. We wouldn't be able to do these study groups without you. Stick around for the after show. I always look forward to the questions you have, and we want to thank you for joining us in this first hour. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, let me take a sip. Let's now get some questions from you. I need to get my camera set up. I need to sit up in my chair. I'm not even in the picture. I'm way down here. Get some of this done. I need to now change what's on my screen so I can see the questions that you ask. Also, I've had a few other super chats come through. We've got Anthrox 1028 with a $5 super chat who says, working on 1102 this month. Maybe I can pop this up. Here we go. Working on 1102 this month. Used to work in a cell phone industry, which is not an uncommon place to start in tech, as it turns out. Was the go-to tech guy in the store. This helps fill in a lot of the knowledge gaps. It's one of the things I found when I first started with the A+, is that I thought I would just be able to jump into this. I was already in the industry, already knew a lot about different devices and operating systems and working with the hardware. And then I started my A+ studies and realized, wait, I really don't know anything about this. I thought I really understood all of these different technologies, actually just getting started. Some I knew very well, but some I didn't know at all. And so I want to thank you for the $5 super chat. Best of luck with your 1102. I think that'll be a lot of fun to come in. So I want to create a place on my site here for you, or in the chat, for you to be able to answer a question. So I'm going to start this up. Let's start a Q&A. There will be, I'm going to click here to ask a question. So you'll see this at the top of the page. Here we go. And then I need to, I think I need to do it. There it is. So there's your questions. click here to ask a question. Then you can put your questions directly in there, while at the same time, we have other things that are in the chat. You can keep the chat going through here as well. We're seeing a few come in already. This is probably one of the most common questions I get about what's in the news most recently. And this is from Carson, who asks, hey, Professor, what are your thoughts on AI in the IT world? Do you think there's a chance that AI will replace tech jobs? Well, if you've spent any time on the latest AI technologies that are out there, and this technology is not new, it's been around forever, it seems. AI, the most popular iteration of AI, it seems, is the Chat GPT. That certainly I've used. I've tried it out. I've worked with it in many different ways to try to get it to automate or make things easier, or just see what it would take to provide me with content. And it's awful. It really gives me incorrect information constantly and presents it to me as if it is actual. But a lot of the information it provides me is either incorrect, a little bit too vague. Probably the things that I find most incorrect are the ones where you ask GPT to tell it to you like you're in a 5-year-old and have it provide some type of simplified answer. And in the process of doing that, it tends to give you wrong information. So I'm not impressed there. I thought, well, what if it could help me study? I'll have it give me some questions. Create a question for the Core 2 exam. And even the questions that it presents to me are not questions that would be asked by CompTIA, and in some cases don't provide me with the right answers either. All right, it kind of failed on that one as well. But there are some things with the AI that it does very well. There's some tasks that it does without much of a problem. But being able to have that human knowledge, being able to change, manipulate, and work through a problem is done much more efficiently by a human. It's done more accurately by a human. And currently, I see nothing in the industry out there that even comes close to being good enough to even consider replacing tech jobs. They just aren't good enough yet. Now, will they get good enough to replace some of those in the future? Well, we'll have to see whether I will continue to be useful as a way to provide you with training or not. Will the AI take over and there'll be no use to have YouTube videos ever again? This seems unlikely, at least in the near future. So currently, I'm not seeing anything that that makes me want to think that the current versions of AI would replace tech jobs, but there's a lot of great science fiction out there that talks all about it. So we can always look to that as in the future, the robots will run the world and we'll have to fight for our jobs to make sure that they don't take that away from us. We'll see if that ever happens. But currently, I just don't see any evidence that would point me towards worrying or really considering that any of these would be any type of concern for anybody in information technology. Let's do some questions from the chat, some additional questions from the chat. The question here, this is a pretty good one. I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Does the IT industry generally provide onboarding/training for entry-level positions, or is the certification process viewed as covering that? And I've had IT positions where it's been both ways. When I started out in IT as entry level, I already had a good bit of experience working inside of a PC. So I knew about taking the cover off, replacing the cards, updating the motherboard, adding some memory, replacing the storage drive. I was very comfortable inside of the system. So my very first job out of college was as a field service technician, where as it turns out, I replaced motherboards, I added memory, I changed out storage drives. It's things I already knew. And I want to believe, and I think it's true, they hired me because they knew they wouldn't need to train me on that part of the job. I at least had some type of core knowledge that they could pull from. And then, of course, I got some training when I was there on nuances with different manufacturers' components, but that was really more of ongoing training and not onboarding training, which is very different. Now let's fast forward about 10 years. I'm still in the IT industry, and I start my very first job with a manufacturer. In this case, it's a software manufacturer at the time called Network General. That company made a product called the Sniffer. That was their and our claim to fame at the time. That product was a network analysis tool. You plug it into the network, it shows you packets, and there was nothing else in the world that could do that at the time. There was no Wireshark. There were no third-party protocol analysis tools. There were a few out there, but nothing with the scope and breadth of the Sniffer product. And when I started work with them, I knew quite a bit of the product because I was a user of the product. But they brought me in on my first day. They flew me to California, and for a week, no, I want to say at the time it was 2 weeks, they trained us. I happened to start at a time when they were doing their normal training for engineering, for systems engineering for the company. So I rolled in my first day and effectively met every single engineer in the company. We're all in the same place in California. We're all going through the same training, and I'm drinking from a fire hose because they've already been here and worked at this company. I'm trying to get trained up, but I had 2 weeks to kind of get into it and understand the technologies and the products. So some companies spend a lot of time training you and making sure that you're knowledgeable in the products. Other companies want to use your experiences you've already had to bring you in-house and not have to worry about training you to get up to speed. It really just depends on what the employers want and how they work and what their own philosophy is on hiring and getting people up to speed. So I would like to say that if they don't give you training, that they probably hired you at a higher rate because they knew that you were competent and wouldn't need a lot of training. You could get up and running very, very quickly to have something like that happens. I think that's a good question to ask in an interview. Well, let's say that this works out and we like each other and I come on board. Do you like to train right out of the gate? Would you prefer I do my training now, or you're hiring people that are already trained? You can have that conversation. That can be a good one to have with in any particular environment. Especially, they always ask that question, do you have any questions for me in the interview? And then you say, I do have a question. Let's talk about training and getting up to speed. I like what I've seen so far. Your company excites me. I like the people I've met so far. Tell me about the onboarding process and training. Then let them go. That's a great question to ask. And then it's a question, as it turns out, that you would be interested in knowing, which is even better when you're going through those. Let's go to another question that coming from Casual Gameplay 4K, which is that my account? I think no, it's not. That could be, but it's not. For Core 2, do you have to memorize every possible path for every single tool? I've seen these. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've seen these practice questions on the internet. And they're kind of weak questions. They're questions written by people that want to create questions to ask you online, but they're not questions that are indicative of an actual exam question. So what I find, of course, on the exam, they could ask you anything about anything. So if it's in the exam objectives, they could ask it. But what I tend to find on the exam is these trivial type of onesie-twosie questions that people tend to worry about prior to going into the exam are not even thought about on the exam. Because if you are studying and you know where system configuration is, or how do I start up Event Viewer, it's already assumed that you can do that. And quite honestly, in the latest versions of Windows, you don't even need to know that anymore. You go to the search option and you type in system configuration. Boom. Why are they going to ask you how to find it on an exam? You're never going to need to know that. And I think a lot of people think that the CompTIA exams are very blind to actual use, but in reality, the questions are actually very, very accurate to use. The things that I find misleading are the practice exams. Not mine, but others that I find on the internet that are asking you silly questions like how many pins are on memory and how many pins are in an HDMI interface. I don't know. Somebody answered this in the last one. They knew the answer. I don't know the answer because who cares what the answer is? Unless you're manufacturing HDMI cables, maybe that's important. But for the CompTIA A+ and for the vast majority of us, it's not important at all. And the exam reflects how important or not important something like that might be. And knowing the every possible path to get to a single tool is not important at all, other than knowing how to type it in at the command line and start it up. I think that might be good to know. So system configuration, what is the executable that starts that? So that's a good example of something you might get on your exam. But knowing, press start, go to control panel, go to administrative. You don't have to know how to do any of those things. And in fact, you probably won't do that to start these tools either. That's pretty common. And I think don't worry about those ridiculous details. Stick to the exam objectives. Have a look at good, high quality practice exams, and I think you'll be okay. Other questions. Oh, before we go to that, I want to thank Suna in the chat room with the 6 MYR super chat. With that was a question that says, do you think 2 months is enough to study for Security Plus? I think for Security Plus, and really most of the CompTIA exams for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, I think 2 to 3 months is a pretty good time frame for studying for these. I think the average folks take 2 to 3 months. Now, if you're already familiar with a lot of things in IT security, you might do it in less time. Or if you're like me and I just don't have a lot of time at night to study, it might take you 6 months. So it really just depends on your particular knowledge and how much time you have to study. And I think as long as you use the exam objectives, use that as your checklist, I think you'll be okay. Now, let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to bring up the objectives. Do I even have the objectives up? How could I have not started? I think I probably closed them. So let's bring up the objectives. I have them right here. Let's go to the 1102 objectives. There we go. And let's show you the objectives on the screen. There they are. And here's the objectives. So once you download them, this is what they look like. And they'll give you an explanation of the exam and what the different domains are and the different percentages for each one of the domains. So you can get a view of that. You've also got a bullet by bullet breakdown of everything you need to know. So let's, for example, look at section 1.2. Given a scenario, use the appropriate Microsoft command line tool. And you've got, I should probably have brought this up in a scrollable version of this, shouldn't I? There we go. That would be that one. So in that version 1.2, let's scroll up to that. All of these different command line tools are in here for ipconfig, ping, hostname, netstat, nslookup, checklist, netuser, netuse, traceroute, format, xcopy, and so on. So these are the commands you need to know in Windows for the 220.1102 exam. That's it. That's all you have to know. I say all you have to know, but you have to know every one of these bullets. Here's the first domain, but notice how it gives you everything. Not all industry exams do this. In fact, very few do. CompTIA is very unusual. This is a huge advantage for you to know exactly what could possibly be asked of you on the exam down to a bullet by bullet. And so when I say you want to go through here and understand every single one of these and really break them down and be able to explain to somebody else what they are, is a great way to know if you're ready to take the exam. So I would highly recommend you start with those. I think they are a very good way to know how to study or know when you're ready to take the exam. I think is a good way to do it. So thank you also for the super chat and the question. I also want to thank Sirth in the chat room with $5 super chat, who says, thanks for helping me pass my A+. You are welcome. I'm glad to hear about the A+. As I always say, I had very little to do with this. You're the one who had to take the exam. So I want to congratulate you for passing the A+, and thank you also for the super chat as well. Let's get some more questions in. I've got a hard stop at the top of the hour, so I want to get through as many as possible. So if it seems like I'm rushing, it's because I'm rushing. Other questions, and I think we've already answered this one that talks about what other more advanced command line interface commands should we know. It's in the exam objectives. If you see it in the exam objectives, you should know it for the exam. If you don't see it in the exam objectives, why are you studying that? It's probably not going to be asked of you on the exam. And I tell people all the time, stick to the objectives. If you know every one of those bullets, you're going to pass your exam, no problem. That's really how simple this formula is. Know everything that's listed in those exam objectives. When you know all of it, you will pass your exam. Now, of course, you have to go take it and get those questions right. But if you know everything in that list, you're not going to have any problem with this exam at all. Question here. How to buy a voucher on my website. If you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, you can purchase a voucher if you live in the U.S., a U.S. territory, or Canada. Unfortunately, I don't have discounted vouchers outside of those countries. You buy them on my website, and I send you the voucher code. And I have on the main page of my website, I'll bring this up so you could see it. On the main page of my website, I think I can start this. If you go to professormesser.com, will I spell it correctly? Who knows? That's a really good question here. But down here at the bottom of the site, if you scroll down under other information or more information, not only do you have a breakdown of everything in my studio, but they're at the very top, step-by-step exam registration process. So this is the process once you get your voucher code, and even if you don't have a voucher code and you just want to know what you have to go through to register, this is it, step-by-step. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. There's a bunch of steps. I'll go through the entire thing to tell you where you use the voucher, and it's only until the last step do you ever put in the voucher code. But I tell you about all of that, and I tell you things to look for, and I tell you don't put it in. In fact, there's a place a lot of people will put it in at the very beginning of the voucher process is an option. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe it's on the previous page. I think it's at the very top. That talks about where you would do this. There's a whole process of checking the exams. It's on this page where it asks you, do you have a private access code? And then you put in the private access code. Your voucher is not the private access code. That's something different for exams that are private. They don't want other people to take those exams. So the process is on my website. It takes you through the entire thing from beginning to end. That's a good place to go if you're trying to figure out how to do this. How do you get the voucher? What are they used for? A lot of people ask me, do I just take this voucher and it just pays for the entire exam? Yes, it does. Even though you could have paid more for a more expensive voucher, you paid less for a discounted voucher, and yet you get the same exam. Yes, that's exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works. So good way to do it. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. Other things. I'm kind of flipping through, and I'm trying to get rid of the questions that we've kind of already touched on and focus on these. Wow, this is a good one. And I think a lot of people go through this. So let's kind of talk about this really quick. This is from Linus Hart, who asks, I plan to take 1102 very soon. However, the test I studied for was the 902. But since COVID and life, I'm with you, happening, I have been unable to take that version. What are the main changes from the 902 to the 1102? Wow, that is 2 separate versions back. There have been extensive changes to the exam objectives since that time. And so I'll go back to what I mentioned, really one of the very first things I mentioned on the live stream today, now an hour and a half ago, was only use study materials that match the version of the exam that you're going to take. I don't think I said it quite that specifically at the beginning, so let me do that now. So look at your exam materials. And do they show a 220-1101 or a 220-1102? If they don't, throw them out. You don't need to use them. Let me give you an example of why that is. I'm going to bring up some statistics on my screens over here if I can find the one I'd like to use. I'm going to bring up the statistics just for the changes between the 1002 and the 1102. So this is just one version back. Let's bring up all of the changes, the summary of changes between all of those. So I'm going to go to the 1102. The 1102 exam has 580 total objectives. Let me bring this up on the screen so we can kind of follow along with this. So the 1102 exam, there it is. The total number of objectives on the 220-1102 are 580 objectives. So that's quite a lot to know. The new objectives in the 1102, so from the 1002, which is not the 902 version you're talking about, this is even more recent, but still retired. 1102, 210 of those objectives are brand new. And that means that 36, almost 40% of the exam is information that was not in the 1002. Now I'm confusing myself. That's 40% difference between just the last version. Now imagine the version before that. How much of this do you think has changed? A lot more than 40%. Probably more than half of the exam is completely different. So if you study 902, the best score you could possibly get on your exam is 50, if we talk conservatively. That's quite a change. So I tell people that's not a good thing to go with. That's 50% is not a passing score. So do not use that. Do not use that as a qualification. Just for fun, let's see if I can find my video stats for the 902. I don't even know if this is in here. Let's see if it's here. I'm not sure. This goes way back. I haven't had to go to those versions of the exam in quite some time. So let me see if I could find an 1102 list. I don't even think I have it here. 902 to 1002 comparison. Can you believe I found that? These numbers are not as good as they should be, but the difference there is a 23% difference, about 25%. A quarter of the exam was new from the 902 to the 1002, and then from the 1002 to 1102, even more of the exam is different. So I think that's a pretty good summary for you. That should give you an idea of what those changes are. It's not just main changes. The entire exam is updated every single revision. So there could be extensive changes in between 902 and 1102. There's absolutely extensive changes there. So that's the problem we run into. Other questions. Let's keep going down this list. I have others here. So this is really a comparison between the different versions of the A+ exams that are current. Are the questions similar 1102 from 1101? Or a few extra questions? There's quite a big difference in topics between the 1101 and 1102. These two exams are really designed to be standalone exams. And so there's very little overlap between the two. The type of subjects that you need to know for 1101 are very different than the subjects you need to know for the 1102. I highly recommend studying for them individually and not studying both of them at the same time and thinking you're going to take both of these exams on the same day or one after the other. It's a very bad way to study. Study one, learn everything you need to know for that first exam, because you can take either the 1101 or 1102 first. Doesn't matter which one you take first. Study for that one until you know it, until you know all of the exam objectives. Go take that exam, go pass that exam, and then you can shift gears to the new version. Time-wise, it shouldn't be any difference in how long it takes to study. It should be the exact same time. The difference is how you study. And I think it's important to minimize the amount of information you need to learn, and then you can jump into the next exam once you learn everything you need to know. I think that's a good way to do it. Other questions. Let's see what else is there. And we've got other folks in the chat. Lady Snowblood says, just want to say thanks, Professor Messer. Shout out to your class. Say, hey, class. I am shouting out to you, class. Hey, everybody, for watching in a classroom. There are a number of people that do, in a classroom environment, watch to get a little more info for their A+. And we thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And Lady Snowblood, thank you so much for the comment. Other questions here. This is a pretty good question. I think it's a one we can kind of talk numbers and economics. Mantle asks, if my budget is very limited, should I buy the exam retake bundle just in case I do not pass the first time? CompTIA on their website has a unique bundle that you can't get anywhere else, where it is a voucher, but it's a voucher that includes a retake. So it's the same voucher code, and you can simply, if you don't pass the first time, use the same voucher code to book another exam, and you can take the exam again. Obviously, that voucher doesn't cost twice as much. It's not like buying two vouchers. It's a lot like buying a voucher and a half. So it's sort of like insurance that you can put with your voucher that you could use. Now, your question seems to have a little bit of a paradox to it, because your budget is limited And you're saying, should I buy the exam retake bundle? Well, the exam retake bundle obviously costs 1.5 times what a normal voucher would cost, or somewhere about that range. If your budget's very limited, what you should do is buy a single voucher without a retake because it's less expensive, and then know everything that's listed in the exam objectives. That's the best way to do it. In other words, this is sort of silly to say it this way, but don't fail your exam. That's the most budget conscious way to do this. Now, the reality is, though, with all of the videos that we have, with our course notes, our practice exams, third-party products on our site, the strategy I give you about going through the exam objectives, there's no reason why you can't spend the time to learn everything you need to know so that when you go into the exam, you pass it the first time. And if you're looking for budget-friendly, that's the best way to do it. It takes a little bit of work on your side. You need to make sure you're not going to fail that exam, but you've also spent less money to take your exam. I'll also tell you that if you are in school, if you are a student in a college, university, and I think high schools too, I'm not sure this is worldwide or if it's North America and EU, but on the CompTIA website, you can purchase vouchers in the academic store, and the academic vouchers are about half price. That's an enormous discount. If you're wondering where that link is, I've said to you the whole time, you can buy vouchers on my site. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And I've got, let me bring that up so you can see that page. If you go to professormesser.com/ if I type it in right, /vouchers, and let's put in the right domain name. And if you don't know where this is, right at the top of my site is a link for vouchers. Thanks for the ad, Google. Appreciate that. And that's a horrible ad. I need to nuke that one. At the very top, it even says, if you are a college student, you can purchase vouchers at the academic CompTIA store, and I give you a link to that. And if you're not a college student, then continue with this process. So that's what I tell folks is you need to go have a look at that academic store, make sure you're using the set of vouchers that applies to you. You could save some significant money right there. And I don't want you to buy a voucher on my site if you're a student because you get such a great discount. Don't buy it on my site. Go buy it at the academic store. That's why I put that there as the first step when you're buying vouchers. That way you'll know you're getting the best possible price for the voucher. Other questions? Let's keep going on this list. Keep going down and figuring out the details of this. Other questions. This is a good one. I get this one, a question quite a bit as well, which asks, I've already been working as a help desk technician at a school, but I don't have a CompTIA A+ cert. Should I take the certification first, or should I go forward with Network Plus or Security Plus? You know, this is really more of a what do you want to do next in your career question. You obviously have a job now that if you were applying for this job, they would probably ask you for the A+, but you already have the job. So you don't have to have the A+. Now, the real question is, what's your next job going to be? Where is your next job going to be? Will it be with your existing employer, or will it be with a third party? Will you go to a different company? Will you leave where you are and go get a higher level position somewhere else? I often talk about leveling up in our industry and going and taking a new position. Taking a job, spending 3 years in the job, going to the next job is a great way to level up in this industry, to get a job with more responsibility, more pay, more flexibility, or whatever it is that you would like to do. So that's why I often tell people that you need to look at what the job is asking you for. It's not about what I think you should do. In many ways, it's not even what you think you should do. It's about what an employer is looking for. Now, if you know that your current employer loves the A+, maybe they want to move you into a networking role, maybe they want to move you into a desktop services role, you need to look and see what the job postings for those jobs ask for. Do they ask for Microsoft certifications? Do they ask for a Network Plus or Security Plus? If you're looking at a third-party job somewhere else, what do they ask for? It may be that you feel like you have all of the knowledge that is contained within the A+, working in the job that you work at now on the help desk, but you want to go work with another company who says, we would love it if you applied to this if you have the A+. Well, telling somebody Yeah, but I know everything from the A+. I don't need the cert. You can just assume that I already have it. Well, the problem is they don't know that. They don't know you. And one of the best ways to prove that to them is to just have the cert. And if you really have been working in this job, you know the content, probably won't be a very long process to study all of the exam objectives, walk in and be ready to take both of those A+ exams. So I would also recommend you do that you have a look at what is going to be expected of you to be able to do this. I mean, a lot of folks, I won't say a lot, but there are folks that will watch my video series just so they can learn the things that normally they would need to know if they were to go in and take the certification exam, but they have no plans to do that. They just want to be sure they know the content. And so they go through my videos. And they email me and they tell me that they have no intention of getting certified. They like that they know all of this information and they are now prepared to do things technically on their own systems. There are other folks that will say, I have to get an A+ because this place I'm interviewing with, they want to see the A+. And I've already been in this industry forever, but they want an A+. So I'm going to go take the A+ exam. And I think that's a very good way to go about doing this, is really focusing on what the different options are and what's going to give you the best possible outcome if you were to send in an application for that position. I think that's pretty important if somebody's working through those. Along those same lines, this question asks, does taking Network Plus first make it easier to take Security Plus next time? How much value does Security Plus add to the resume when it comes to finding a cybersecurity job? Kind of a similar question. The value of a certification is based on what you're able to do with it. Are there employers that you're interested in working with or working for who are asking you to have a Security Plus? In that case, Security Plus would be very valuable. Take, for example, the U.S. federal government. I mostly in Department of Defense, but this sort of bleeds over into different parts of the U.S. federal government and also into third-party contractors with the Defense Department. Almost all of those consider Security Plus as one of the foundational certifications to have if you're getting a job in IT. You have to have a Security Plus or a similar cert. There's a list of them. Security Plus tends to be the more popular of that list. And so people will go get their Security Plus first. That's their first certification because they know they'll be applying to one of these jobs in the U.S. federal government. But you may be talking to a company that's in a different state. They're in a different line of work. It's a transportation company. It's a manufacturing company. It's a financial company. They may just say, we want a Network Plus, or we would like an A+, or we would like a Microsoft cert, or we want Amazon Web Services, or Azure, or whatever it happens to be. So what the value of this is really based on those employers and based on what you want to do in your career. Now let's go back to the first part of your question, though, which asks, does taking Network Plus first make it easier to take Security Plus next? And in some ways it can, but the reality is there's probably about a less than 10% overlap between those two exams. And I would say that studying and getting your Network Plus is kind of a bad way to prepare for the Security Plus because the overlap is so small. You could just as easily simply study for the Security Plus and simply fill in that 10% gap as you went along. You're going to be studying a lot with Security Plus anyway. Adding in that 10% of Network Plus content would be relatively easy. Why would you study the other 90% of Network Plus when your real goal was to get the Security Plus in the first place? Conversely, if you've watched any of my study groups and talked to me, you know that I'm a very big proponent for having as much knowledge as you can about the network. The network connects everything in IT. No matter what your job is, you will be touching the network. You will need some knowledge of networking. And the more knowledge you have of networking, the better technologist you will be with firewalls, databases, data centers, operating systems, email, the internet, encryption, and everything else. So there's an aspect of networking that plays very, very strongly into a career in security. If fact, I often tell people, if you want to get into security, you need to know as much as you can about operating systems, Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and you need to know as much as you can about networking. There's a huge amount of networking in security. It's ironic that there's a very little overlap between Network Plus and Security Plus in CompTIA, but I think they designed it that way to keep those two exams very different in scope. And I think that comes through in the exam objectives. So I would tell you that if you are interested in learning more about Security Plus, that Network Plus is not necessarily and probably is unnecessary as a precursor or prerequisite to Security Plus, but I think it might help you quite a bit in your overall goals in IT to get as much networking knowledge as you can. A lot of folks go from A+ to Network Plus to a Cisco CCNA for that very reason, because they believe, and perhaps rightly so, that a gateway into security is knowing as much as you can about what's going on in the network. Let me give you an example of that, because I think this is good to go through. Let's say that you're working as an IT security professional. And in my previous roles in different organizations, I met with thousands of different companies when it came to security. And we would talk to them about security. And I've talked with people in some of the biggest companies in the world, some of the smallest companies in the world, these little small businesses with security. But the trend seems to be the same throughout all of them, is that you need some type of graduated knowledge in the rest of IT to be able to then secure those components in IT. And that's why I tell people, get as much knowledge as you can in operating systems, get as much knowledge you can in networking, because here's an example. Let's say you need to upgrade your firewalls. This is something you have to do from time to time. You're buying some new firewalls, you're going to install those. But we need to have redundancy in our firewalls. We need fault tolerance. We need some way to have high availability so that if a firewall was to fail, we'd still have uptime on our network. So we need to install 2 firewalls. Now, are those going to be installed in a device where one is the primary and the other is the standby? Or will this be an active-active configuration where both firewalls are working simultaneously and effectively balancing the load between them? And then how do you engineer that? How do they fit into the network? What's the routing look like in a configuration like that? Are you going to switch it? Is it going to work at layer 2 even? And if you do it with switching, are you going to have any redundancy set up for your switches? Now add on to that maybe IPsec tunnels that are connecting to our firewalls to one of our partner firewalls. How do you set up the IPsec tunnel? And how do you route that traffic? I need a routing table. I need to configure an IPsec inside of the firewall. And then I need to, once that's set up, make sure that I have a VPN set up for people outside of the organization that are traveling to be able to gain access to their internal systems. All right, well, I need to set up a VPN for that with appropriate encryption and routing and maybe DHCP. So all of these things where you're dealing with routing tables, routes in general, DHCP scopes, understanding where routing happens, understanding where switching happens, those are all networking components. There was very little to that description of implementing dual firewalls where there was a security part. You know, once it's put in, we can then talk about, do we set up security zones? What type of rules do we want in the firewall? What additional scanning is the firewall going to do? Those are certainly security questions. But just getting it installed is an entire engineering process and planning process that deals with your knowledge of networking. And you'd never be able to work in IT security without having some of that knowledge already on board. So I think I might have even taken that to the nth degree in thinking along those lines, but it's a pretty valuable set of skills in security. You know, an entry-level security job is very different than an entry-level IT job. You know, security needs you to have already some additional knowledge on board. And so that's why you see a lot of if there are entry-level positions in security, you're working as effectively a help desk in a SOC, a security operations center. You often are not put into an IT security analyst, troubleshooting technologist position until you have extensive knowledge in operating systems and networking. That's seems to be a standard across the board. And that's why I always recommend you get as much networking knowledge as possible. Other questions. Let's go through our list, see what other things are there. Let's see. I've got other ways. I think when people talk about operating systems, so along those lines, I mentioned knowing as much as you know about operating systems, knowing as much as you can about networking. So what about operating systems for Security Plus? Where can you go to get that type of knowledge? And I think good places to go are the manufacturers of those operating systems or places that can give you specific knowledge about those operating systems. So if I was going to do this today and try to find an operating system training, I would go to Microsoft and see what options they had today for operating systems, for Windows Server, for managing Active Directory. And then, of course, there's other cloud-based trainings that they have as well. But I think operating systems, you'd probably stick with Windows Server and Windows operating system itself. And then for Linux, I'd go Linux Plus. Maybe you'd look at the Red Hat certifications. Those are very popular on the Linux side. And then although Mac OS, there are some Mac OS certifications out there, I think most people learn what they need with Mac OS at a user level, but I think if you're administering those systems, it might be worthwhile to take an administration course from Apple as well, and Apple does have certification courses for Mac OS. So there's 3 good examples of each one of those. You can make an entire career out of managing Windows, out of managing Linux, and even out of managing just Mac OS. There are places you can work where they focus on one or more of these. And in very large organizations, you might be put into a group that manages just Windows systems. There may be a completely different group of people that manages all the Linux systems. You don't even know where they are. They might be in another city dealing with Linux, and you're in another place. You're in the headquarters building dealing with Windows, and then downstairs, there's folks that handle the Mac systems. And none of you have access to any of those systems. You only deal with Windows, or you only deal with Linux, or only deal with Mac OS. Or you may work at a college or university where you have to know all of them. So it really just depends on what you do as your job and what the expectations are with your job and being able to work through those. The natural follow-up to this, and what a good question it is. So, are companies going to be impressed with all these certifications? I don't know. They will certainly be impressed with knowledge that you bring to the table. And if you've gone through and gotten certifications from Microsoft on Windows Server, you've gotten certifications from Red Hat or CompTIA on Linux with their Red Hat certs or their Linux Plus cert, or you've got certifications from Apple with the Mac OS and iPad OS and other products, well, now you can talk intelligently in the interview. You know, they'll see that and bring you in and go, well, this person has quite a few credentials. Let's see if they really know their stuff. Let's bring them in for a technical interview, or let's have a phone call and talk tech and see how well you talk tech with them. They can say, tell us what you know about Linux. Oh, well, I just deployed a new Linux cluster. It's running this, and we use this version, and we implemented these applications, and we connected it with these systems. You know, those are the conversations people are going to want to know. As someone who has been a hiring manager, who has sat across the table from somebody wanting to work at these jobs and me needing to make a decision about them, I'm going to drill down into those things on their resume and find out, tell me everything you know about, oh, I see here you've worked with this technology. Tell me everything you know about that technology. Let's see if you know. Let's really see if you know. And then we'll step through all of those. Now, are they going to be impressed? Maybe. One thing you do want to be careful about along those lines, and I've mentioned this in other study groups, is that when you start putting together more and more and more credentials, and I think you've probably seen these people in the world where in their signature tag, they've listed about 12 or 15 different certs. Like all they do constantly is study and get a cert and study and get a cert. And I've had people come to me and say, I can't get a job. I provide them with my resume and I've got 10 certifications. I have my CCNA. I've got the Red Hat cert. I have a Microsoft Azure cert. I've got the Microsoft 365 cert. I've got A+ Network Plus Security Plus. They just go through this big list. And I say, hold on, what IT job do you have right now? And they go, I don't have one. I'm trying to get an entry-level position. Well, if I was a hiring manager and somebody showed up with 10 certs on their resume for an entry-level job, I may not hire them because they're overqualified, or at least to me, they're very much considered to be overqualified. I would put them in a position on a help desk. They'll be ridiculously bored because they're not going to be doing Cisco. They're not going to be doing Azure. They're not going to be doing AWS. They're not going to be doing these other things that they've gone and got certs for. So they're going to last 2 months and then they're going to leave and go do something else. I can avoid that by just not hiring them now. Overqualification is a real thing. You have to be very careful about that. And I mentioned I have a video, and it's in the YouTube video description of this video that you're watching right now, on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I mention overqualification quite a bit. And I also mention I have another video also tagged on this video on why your resume keeps getting rejected. Actually, I have 2 versions. I have another video on 5 more reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. And one of the things that's important is that you create, when you're filling out a job application, you create a customized resume that is specific to the things that they're asking for in the job description. So if they're asking for A+, make sure A+ is at the top of your page. If they're asking for Network Plus, make sure Network Plus is listed at the top of the page. If CCNA is not anywhere in the job description and it's nowhere listed as a specific certification, you may not want to put that on your resume, because that says to me that's an intermediate level cert. People who are at that level aren't wanting a job working with IT management or working with network management. They're looking at managing switches, managing routers, troubleshooting those systems. I'm just trying to hire somebody for the help desk. So make sure your resume matches the job that you're going for. And this is I mentioned in this video that every resume you submit should be customized. And I'm not talking about rewriting it every time. They're just minor changes you can make that really customize the resume for the job. And I think if you do that, and other people do not do that, you are at an inherent advantage. And that's what you're trying to get in this resume process, in the interviewing process, in the entire job hiring process, is you're looking for an angle. You're looking for an advantage. And having customized cover letters, having customized resumes are a great way to get those advantages. I think that's the place you should be going and you should be focusing on. I think those are incredibly useful. So make sure you have a look at those videos. They're relatively short and you can run through them and really understand more about what's there. And I think that's an important place to go with it. Well, I think that is probably a great place to stop for our study group today. We had a fantastic first hour with the questions that you asked at the beginning of the study group. I had, of course, all of those that we do, and we have new questions for you next month as well. We just don't do the same questions every month. So come back next month, and I'll have a whole new set of Core 2 questions for you. If you're studying for your Network Plus, stop by next week. Wednesday of next week, 1 week from today, we've got our next live event. We can go through that list, and I would be glad to show you all of the new questions I have for Network Plus. We'll do the same thing. We'll ask you questions in the first hour. You ask me questions in the second hour. Before I mention it, I want to thank John Barry in the chat for the €10 super chat. John says, I passed my Core 1 last week. Core 2 is tomorrow. Best of luck with your Core 2, by the way. Your course notes and practice exams are priceless. Nope, they're not priceless. They're available on my website for a very nominal fee. Many thanks for what you do. I appreciate your kind words about the course notes and practice exams. We do spend a lot of time producing those to give you the highest quality study materials you will find anywhere. And I'm very proud of both of those. Best of luck with your Core 2 exam. And thank you for the super chat, John. Also, thank you, Matthew Davis in the chat room with the $5 super chat, who says, you're the best. No, Matthew, you're the best. Thanks you so much for your ongoing support. Thanks for all of you for your ongoing support. You're the one that really makes this different. You're the one that makes it the high quality that it is. Thank you for your ongoing support, your comments. And once we're done here, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. We'll meet you in Discord afterwards, along with everyone else who's studying for these exams. It's a great study place. Follow us there at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you so much for everything. We will see you on the next study group. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on the Core 2 study group. Thanks, everybody.